Okay, I've been wanting to make this video for quite some time. And the question is, can you retire with side hustles? And in reality, should you even try? That's what we're gonna answer today. It's gonna be a little bit of a longer episode, but I'm excited to share it with you. And I'm gonna go into all the details that you're gonna wanna know. So we gotta define what a side hustle is. To some, it's something that escapes the 9-to-5 rat race that they believe that they might be in. And to others, it's just a side hustle or side project, something that brings them passion and enjoyment that just so happens that it brings them some money for doing it. And there's a very important distinction here that if you love what you do and you can make money doing it, why not just do that instead of your job? Well, for some, it might just be lack of experience or fear or a multitude of other reasons that we don't need to discuss because, well, everyone's gonna have a different reason. But if that's what the video was about, the title would then become why you should retire doing the things that you love most. And that does sound fairly nice, but for many people, it's not a glamorous thing that they decided to do. In fact, a lot of people that are doing side hustles have kind of fallen into it because they might be behind on their bills or they're deep into credit card debt. And I wanted to make a video for both groups of people, not just one or the other. For example, I went to Thailand a few years ago with my wife, at the time girlfriend, and I met a guy that was really, really cool. And I asked him, you know, how many jobs does he work? And he told me that he has 3 different jobs. All of them are more like side hustles. One is selling shoes, one is a bartender / server at a restaurant, and the other one is a bouncer at a nightclub. And all of these, he works different hours, different days to try to make the most amount of money so he can provide for him and his family. And that got me thinking that there's probably a lot of people in the same situation that are working multiple jobs, multiple side hustles just to survive. In fact, now, me, 5 years later, I'm kind of doing the same thing. I have my YouTube side hustle, my TURO side hustle, my passion project of selling merch, selling books, my long-term investments, my trading investments, all kinds of stuff that I do to provide for my family, but also some of them that I do for fun, and that happen to bring me some sort of income. And of course, my circumstances might be a little bit different than yours and sort of the reasons behind why I'm doing certain things, but it's also kind of important to think about, should we all be doing side hustles and working many, many jobs just to survive or just to provide for our families? It's just something to think about as we explore the real question of today. Are there better side hustles than others? And the answer to that is, of course there are. Some make you more money, some give you more freedom, some are easy to make money with, some are a lot harder and require education, some might make you happier when you're doing them, and others may be more flexible with your work schedule, and some could require an employer, and others you have to be self-motivated. So of course, I had to do some investigative journalism and give you guys some of the side hustle examples that have personally worked for me or haven't worked for me, and why or why not. And the first one on the list is one that I've enjoyed a lot, and that has been TURO. In fact, that is one of the ones that I want to turn into a full-time business, which means I have to get lots and lots of cars under my belt and also start looking for employees to hire part-time that can manage the cars and reach out to clients and meet with clients, etc., etc. So this is one that I'm working continuously on because 1, it's a lot of fun, and 2, it's also allowed me to own some of the cars that I've wanted to own for a very long time, but also without having to make the payments myself, which has been really, really cool. And another business that I've tried out was drop shipping, which although it has made me some money, it is very, very stressful trying to find products, making sure that they're viral enough to be making money for the long term, or at least enough money in the short term to make it worth it, and then keeping up with trends, reaching out to customers back and forth on returns and things like that. At the end of it all, wasn't worth it for me. And if I wanted to scale that business, it would take way more time and effort than I wanted to put in. And at the end of the day, it just didn't make me happy, which I think is a really important part when you're doing side hustles or even a job. You gotta be happy doing it. But another side hustle that makes me really happy, but again, doesn't bring me a lot of money, is my merch brand, which if you wanna go check it out, it's something that I'm really passionate about, and I know one day it will do really well, but for now, it's more of a side project that doesn't make me a lot of money, but it does make me really happy. And part of the branding is health, wealth, and happiness. So that's something you gotta think about in your own side hustle journey. What is something that's bringing you health, wealth, and happiness, or is the side hustle that you're doing taking away from that? And that's a good way to analyze whether you wanna do something for the long term or not. For example, for me, YouTube is something that I wanna do forever, and that is why I continuously make videos, because I enjoy it. But that doesn't answer the question of, is it possible to retire with just side hustles, and should you even do it? And of course, the simple answer is yes, it is possible, but it is going to be harder than you probably think it's gonna be. But if you actually end up scaling the business that you go into, then it's gonna be a lot easier in the long term. But in the short term, while you're just one person doing one side hustle, it might be a lot harder to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And the real question to me is, if I found a side hustle that I absolutely loved and I made enough to get by and I could do it in my later years, am I even working a job? And do I even need to retire? It's just something to think about. But all that aside, let's do some actual math and look at some real side hustles and figure out how possible and likely it is to retire with some of these. So how much money do you actually need to retire? And currently, if you look at how people are living and where the inflation rate is, you probably will need anywhere between 2 million all the way, in my opinion, at least 10 million if you're on the younger age spectrum. Now, that is also living in the United States or a first world country, and it all depends on your goals. But for math purposes and just for the average person, that's kind of the math that we're gonna use. And the reason why I mention that is because most of us are gonna want to retire by 65, and that is if we want to live to 90 and 100 years with actual money in our accounts. And obviously, if you plan to retire earlier than that and live a super lavish lifestyle, it's gonna be a higher number than what we're calculating here. And the same is true for the opposite lifestyle. Like for example, if you decide to live in a studio apartment all by yourself with just 3 cats, well, that's probably not gonna cost you a lot of money. But let's take like a $3 million figure, because you're probably gonna live a conservative lifestyle, but you're also gonna wanna enjoy some things as you go into retirement. And all these examples that I'm gonna mention for side hustles that you could start will be from income directly deposited in your account without any taxes taken out or any tax deductions that we can deduct from the total income. And to make up for the taxes, I'll also not include any of the appreciation from the actual investments that you put in. So just keep that in mind. The first one I'm gonna talk about is a product-based business, because a lot of people like to work with their hands, so something like Etsy or Shopify. Average pay for someone in this niche is around $43,000 to $46,000, but that's just average pay. If you were to never scale this business and you were never to hire employees and it never really taking off because the products are not hot, which if you start early enough, I think you could make a lot more. But let's say you're doing this as a true side hustle all by yourself to get to that $3 million figure with no other bills, no taxes, no appreciation included, it would take you around 69 years. So if you want to retire with this type of side hustle, you probably need to scale the business, or you might just need a second job to go alongside with it. But some good news for you. The best Etsy stores actually do around $65,000 a month. So if you were able to get to that level of success, which would mean you're making around $780,000 per year before taxes and appreciation and all that, you would pretty much hit your $3 million goal in roughly 4 years. And I hope this shows you the power of commitment and growth and actually taking your side hustle seriously as a business versus just being like, well, I'll just do that little side hustle I have, right? But I also don't want to discredit real side hustles like Uber and Lyft, and that's what we're gonna talk about next. Now, the average pay for an Uber or Lyft driver is around $18 to $21 an hour, and that's based off of 25 different markets. And when I personally did this in the United States, in the area that I am in, which is in Utah, and if you wanna see the full video on that, it's on my YouTube channel, I made roughly around $30 an hour. But again, that's probably around the 1% earners on Uber. And if you were to work this side hustle 40 hours per week, just like any other job, and let's say you make $20 an hour, that's about $41,000 a year before taxes, maintenance, appreciation, depreciation of your car, all that stuff. But if you did just that 40 hours a week, it would take you 73 years to get to $3 million. So in order to retire actually doing Uber or Lyft, you probably need another side hustle or another job, or just other ways to make money as you Uber and Lyft. But the cool thing is, if you really enjoy driving people around, the nice thing is you can do this even into your later years, as long as you don't have any vision problems or Alzheimer's or anything. Now, while we're on the subject of cars, let's talk about the car rental business, because as you guys know, I run a small business on the TURO platform, so I have a little bit of expertise with this, and I've seen a lot of interest in this niche also. So let's talk about that, and let's see if this is a viable business or if you can retire with this income. First, the average host on TURO makes around $500 per car per month. And if you wanted to do this all by yourself, you could probably manage around 8 cars all by yourself without another employee or anyone helping you out. So 8 cars is the number we'll use, and the 500 figure per car is just the simple math that we're gonna follow. At that point, with 8 cars, you'd be making roughly around $4,000 per month in profit. And let's say you get to a point where all those cars are paid off, you don't have a lot of maintenance, and you're pocketing that $4,000 regularly. Obviously, at some point, you'll have to get new cars, but for now, you're just pocketing that $4K, and that $4,000 a month is pretty much $48,000, which is close to Uber driving without actually being behind the wheel. And rather than it taking 73 years with Uber, it'll only take you around 62 and a half years with TURO. But again, if you were to scale this to a full run business operation, in theory, you could find some hardworking college students and employ them part-time, full-time, whatever your needs are, and maybe even buy some property or land to store these vehicles at. At 80 cars, you could be making $40,000 a month in revenue, give or take a few $1,000s in labor costs and maintenance, so maybe like $20,000 a month. That type of business and that type of scale could lead to retirement a lot quicker. But of course, it also has a huge risk tied alongside with it, especially if something like a pandemic were to hit and people just all of a sudden stop renting cars. So all that you got to take into account. Now, what about YouTube? I think we've all watched videos. I mean, you're watching one right now, and we've all wondered, is it even possible to do this ourselves? And how much do average YouTubers actually make? Well, here's the answer. The average pay for a YouTuber is around $4,600 a month. And that is from YouTube's AdSense as a creator. Now, my average looks way lower than that, but that's because the actual average is a lot lower, because the ones that are the top 1% creators or even the 0.1% creators definitely skewed the numbers a lot. But as a creator, most of my money doesn't even come from AdSense alone. In fact, most of my money comes from sponsorship deals and things like merch or physical products. And if you were to not grow the channel from that $4,600 number whatsoever, just kind of stay stagnant in that realm, which I think is impossible to do if you actually enjoy what you're doing and you're providing entertainment or valuable knowledge. But if you were just to stay at that number, you'd roughly be making around $50,000 to $55,000 a year. And it would take you around 54 years to hit $3 million. But the beautiful thing about YouTube is it does become more and more passive as time goes on, because your videos are constantly being viewed and pushed in the algorithm as long as they are still being searched on the platform. But the downside to doing YouTube is that most channels don't even become profitable. What do I mean by this? Personally, I've been doing YouTube for 3 years, and my YouTube AdSense hasn't even made me enough money to pay back for the equipment or the time or the editing that I've put into the business. So unless you absolutely love making content with a strong will and determination that one day it will all pay off, then that's the only time that you should do it, because without all that, you might never make it as a content creator, period. Now, I don't want you to think that there's no money in this business, because there is. Obviously, a lot of creators do make money, but that is some of the harsh realities that we have to face when we go into a business, regardless of how fruitful it may seem if you look at the top creators. Just like with top earners on TURO, you're not gonna compare yourself to those, because, well, those people typically were early to the platform, risked a ton of money, and just got in at the right time and made the right moves that put them at the top. And not all of us can get that lucky with every single thing that we do. Although, if you do love it, why not give it a try? Now, let's move on to general contract-based work like Fiverr or Upwork. Now, originally I was going to include this one because I was actually researching into doing this type of work for my side hustle series, but I realized unless you're the top 1% earner for Fiverr or Upwork, you'll just not make anywhere near what the other side hustles make. You'll make like a fraction of that, which is great if you live in a second or third world country, or if you don't have a lot of bills to pay, like a college student living at home or a high school kid. But at the end of the day, it's just not worth it unless you plan to make it a real big business and take your work outside of Fiverr and Upwork and actually build a business around it without having to pay all the fees that Fiverr and Upwork charge. So if you're trying to do some kind of service-based work that would maybe fall in line with Fiverr and Upwork, it might be a great way to get customers, but it's definitely not a great way to make money. But don't get discouraged, because there are plenty of people doing project-based work and making really good money, both on Fiverr and Upwork, and also more specifically off the platforms. that leads me into another line of work, which is a private service-based industry like consulting or massage or yoga or some kind of instructor or health coach, whatever. Now, these are all connected because they very, very much range differently in terms of how much money you're gonna make, but you can kind of get a base average, which is somewhere between $60,000 and $70,000 a year. And I'm just gonna use the $65,000 number. And if you were to do that every single year in, year out, never raising your prices and just trying to get to that $3 million figure, you would have done that in around 46 years doing these types of side hustles. And personally, I know a lot of people doing these and they are making decent money. And it's definitely similar to YouTube that the more time that you put into the craft, the more you can charge, the more that you'll make, and eventually shorten that total time that it will take for you to retire. Now, of course, each one of these has its own limitations. Like for example, Uber, you can't do it forever, and you also are limited to the time constraint, or YouTube, where you still have to post consistently. But I think we've kind of answered the question of, can you actually retire with just a side hustle? And the answer is yes. But from what it seems, with most side hustles, unless you actually scale them to be a full-time business with employees and contractors and a big vision behind them, you might just have to do more than one side hustle in order to retire a millionaire. And regardless of what you choose, I wish you all the best. And I hope this video was inspiring and gave you some insight on what it's like in the side gig economy. And if you want to see what other side hustles that you can do, I've personally been making a whole series on this. And if you want to go check it out right here, full playlist. And there's a bunch of side hustle ideas in there that I think you'll enjoy. And I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.